Come on in. We kind of got relocated, barely situated. I figured we should do an update video. Here's the new shop, just kind of scrolling around slowly. You got plenty of space in here. Last time we did anything, we were working on the old, well, I guess the last videos were the lowrider videos, which we'll get back to that thing. But before that, we got started on the villain engine, and we ended up with the wrong head studs. They were head studs for aftermarket heads. So supposedly, I got the right ones, which I'll swap these out. And then I'll torque them down, show you the sequence and whatnot. But first, I suppose we should show you the new addition. This is just a 396 402, the 69 vintage. An older gentleman I knew was selling this, so I decided to pick it up. It has forged, I believe, pistons. It has a bunch of stuff on it. I have the specs inside. A big lift cam. I believe it was a solid roller. I'm not sure. We'll have to take a look at it, but it's just a 30 over 396. And since we already have that going with Project the Villain over here, I figured it wouldn't hurt to have an extra short block. Never hurts to have an extra short block laying around. But like I say, this one has some forged internals. So in order to be true to the building a stock engine, we're gonna start with this one first and see what happens from there, because this has stock, I believe they're just cast pistons, stock rods, a nice set of rods, a nice crank, obviously, and it has an aftermarket solid roller cam in there, which this one I believe was the 650 lift. We'll get to all that stuff. But for now, I'm going to pull these old head studs out of here and get the new correct ones in place, and then I'll show you how I would torque the heads down. Get back to you in a minute. Okay, I've got the other side all assembled. I would say just barely finger tight, a little more than. But I wanted to show you my process on the last side here. We have all the studs are installed except the center one, and I always put, here, let me do it again just so you can watch. Always put thread tape on here where that requires sealant, and on the iron block it requires sealant on the head studs. I always just use Teflon tape. You want to make sure you go around there 3 times. I always hold it in my left hand, rotate the bolt to the right, and it's always going with the threads. Now, as far as those go, you want to just snug these down until they stop. Bam. And then I always put all the washers on them. Now, last time we were doing this, we sprayed the gaskets with the copper spray, and then we kind of had everything half assembled until we figured out that the stud kit was the incorrect kit. So we just kind of left everything lightly assembled. And when I pulled everything apart, I reapplied some of that copper spray to the gaskets. Then you can do this a couple separate ways. You can put the studs in first before you apply the heads. Now, I will note that when you are putting studs on here, when you're just using the Felpro felt gaskets like I did on this, you can put the studs on and then the gasket. But when you're applying the MLSs, the multi-layered steel gaskets, you have to put the head gasket on first before you put the studs in, because the studs do not fit through the bolt holes. Okay, now there's this assembly lubricant they send you. Just helps out with the torque specs and all that. I always like to apply it to the studs. I just put a little bit on my fingers and apply it in one nice little spot on the studs, because it'll apply to all of them as you spin the nut on there. And you can do however you want. Just do something that's not a dirty applicator, which should go without saying, but not in all cases. People get excited and they overlook stupid shit. Now, if you put this in the nut first, which I did on the other side, go ahead and go over here. You see where it loads up the Allen head? Right here on the second one. So you want to put it on the stud first. Or excuse me, put it on the stud. And as you put the nut on and tighten it down, it'll apply through all the threads. I believe I got all that second layer there. Hold on a second. One more layer of these guys to get down here. Okay, and that's a little excessive there, a little fat. But whatever, that'll twerk. Hold on a second, just give me a moment, I will be right back. Need to get this place a little bit more organized than it is.
It's a big shop.
Okay, and we are going to need something out here as well with that, which I'll grab. Oh, it was out and about already, but it wasn't. Just so I need to get my shit together and make sure everything's organized out here in the shop, but I'm far from that right now. And we were looking at these. Now this block that I bought is 30 over. And I had forgotten that this block that we built is 40 over. I'm not sure what the difference is. But as far as the cubic inch goes, to me they're both 396 402 blocks, so whatever. Somebody wants to state in the comment section, then go ahead and let me know, because I do not. Now these guide plates need to be swapped out, and there's lifters that need to be installed. But for now, we will get this going. And then next time we get back, we have a little bit of work to do on the intake and whatnot, so we'll get started on that. We have a pop-off valve, as they're called, on the blower intakes. The blower is ran with the serpentine setup. It has a serpentine pulley setup on it right now, so the intakes do not come with a pop-off valve. So I bought an aftermarket one, and we're gonna get it all installed, which isn't gonna be rocket science, but it's probably gonna be a piece of cake, I would imagine. We'll see, just drill and tap a couple holes and drill in either a single hole. That one could probably use a little more. A single hole, or we'll put a couple smaller holes. We'll have to see what's allowed for on our space when we get to it. But for now, let's get this thing all done and I'll show you guys how to do your torque specs in sequence here, which we'll get this snug down before we go at it with the torque wrench. We'll just snug it down. And I'm going to go with the factory sequence here, which that'll be 1, 2, there's 16 bolts. Studs in this case. But you do it in kind of a swirl motion. The first two are up away from each other, but you kind of do a swirl motion outwards. So you'll see. We have 3 here. I believe it's 4 or 5. And 6. 7. 8. 9. We have 10. 11. 12. Sorry, I was paying attention to what the lubricant was doing down there. 13. 14. 'Forgot we're using the spark plug socket too. 15. No worries. 16. 17. Excuse me, let me sneak by here. Long ways to go yet. There still looks like it. It's actually not that far at all. But if we keep lollygagging about it, it's going to be a while. All right. Now on the stock head bolt torque spec, it's going to be 65 pounds. I always like to go with the stock gasket and head bolt. I always go to 68 or 70 pounds when I'm putting boost in there. These require 80 pounds. So what you want to do, I already got it snug down. I'm starting at 30 pounds. You start at 25 or 30 pounds. And you tighten these in a three-part sequence. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, so that was at 30 pounds. So we'll snug this guy down to 50, which I'm sure you know how to use a torque wrench, but if not, bam. This is just a cheap Harbor Freight one. I try to buy a new one every time we build an engine. This one has actually built a couple engines. So there's nothing saying that it's 100% accurate anymore. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, 15, 16. Snugger on down to 80. Voila. And then I always like to just double check. Don't want to give them much effort, just check them. Oh, excuse me. That is incorrect. Not like I like a little bit, but still don't want to be out of order. We are. Now, as far as tonight goes, we're not going to go too much farther. There's a couple other things we have to do, but okay. This thing is go a little tighter. We'll snug her down to 50. Now, as far as these stock head gaskets go with the stock head bolts, whatnot, I don't know that it's really necessary that you retorque them tomorrow morning. I will, just because it's habit. But I believe I've ran them both ways, snugged after the fact and not snugged. But as far as this thing goes with getting boost, and we'll be giving her hell, we want to give her all the fucking, every chance she can have, all the tricks. Okay. I hate this stand. Of all of them for her to be sitting on. But one of my least favorite stands out of the ones I have. You can tell why she keeps making her way back over towards me. What happened there? If she was in between quick, let's see if she does it again. Yeah, I just probably just holding my hand on it just right. We're all gonna die. We're all gonna die. Just not today. And again, if you're doing this with stock head bolts, 65 is the recommended torque, but you're going to be okay at 70, 68, 70. I've had no issues. These are head studs, and we just torqued them down to 80 pounds in a 3-part sequence. On the original equipment, you would do a 25, a 50, and then a 65. But like I say, how I do it, I believe this one was 35, 40, 50, and then 80 pounds. Which we probably could have spread it out a little more. Started with 40 and then went to like 60 and then went up to 80. But It's all right. We will double check those tomorrow. Now, I suppose tonight we could do one more thing on here. Let me get going on. Let me see if I have it out here already. No. I imagine that's probably another 5/8 or so. Now, most of the time, when my heads are built, they already have the correct guide plates on them. But in this case, the guide plates were small. We have the bigger, I believe they're 7/16 or 5/16, whatever they are on the push rods. Which I need to dig those out and figure out where they're at. Let me figure this out here first. Actually, let me use my head like a smart guy. I love this thing. Keep these things around just in case they find themselves necessary in another build, which I doubt, but you never know. And I dropped the other one down. I'm sure it's directly under the trying to think where my other bed plates are at. Try not to do that a bunch. Which will be fine, but you don't want to scar up your hardware. Okay, let me see. Let me see if these things, yeah, they're clean. Ish. I'm going to want to soak these. Now these are provided by a buddy of mine, but here, let me get them out here and show you the difference. Okay, and some of these are brand new, but these couple are definitely used. But you'll see the difference here. See how wide the gap is right there compared to the one up there. You can't really.
you
But
can.
you can see it's just barely, but it's enough to make the difference. I believe that I forget what he said there. Give me just a moment. Okay, so I found a box of old parts. Oh, see, and I have guide plates right here that were on my. I still have peanut heads, but nonetheless, I'm gonna clean all of them up just in case. And I'll use the best between them, but they're all, I guess it doesn't really matter. That's funny. I had Josh get me some guide plates and I had some already on my other heads. Dummy. But nonetheless, these are the thicker push rods and they are believed to be in good condition. So, they came out of this engine originally, although they were attached to a couple fucked up lifters. There's some guide plates in here. I didn't think of that. This is fairly new too. Because remember the cam went flat, but I was trying to wrestle it to work that day. Alright, so
Why are you doing that?
well, when you grab a pull cue off of the rack, how do you know you're grabbing the straight cue? You roll it across the table.
Oh, I didn't know
This
that.
is primitive, but these are all they all roll perfectly flat to me. So, looks like a usable set of push rods, and we have 2, 4, 6, 8. 2, 4, 6, 8. So there we are. What I'm going to do is dump some lacquer thinner in these, soak them overnight. I'll flip those around. But we're going to get these all nice and cleaned up. And then we can install these. And we have lifters to install. We have an oil pan yet to install, which is all quick and easy stuff. The oil pan is over here. It's filthy as well. So I should actually get that thing out and get that ready to be pressure washed and cleaned up. It's disgusting. It was on the bottom of the engine when we pressure washed it before we took it, so it's gross, and it was gross to begin with. This engine was one that had a nice leak in it, so it was one of those things that changed its own oil. I never gave it an oil change. I changed the filter a couple times, but it was one of the things you just had to keep up on oil, so it pretty much all the time had nice fresh oil in it, but you know how those get. Disgusting. Alright, there's some spare big block pots. Let me deal with that. Trying to think. As for now, I believe that's all we can deal with. We'll get back with me tomorrow and we will go from there. We good? I mean, come on.
Say your like, share, and
We'll go
subscribe.
ahead and like, share, and subscribe, but I mean, it should come with